Through the Gates is produced under the support of the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management to enhance, promote, and defend the North American model of wildlife conservation and responsible wildlife management. That's our mission. We're engaged in fighting at every level so that wildlife management remains science-based and conservation continues to work for our wildlife. To learn more and join the movement, visit SaveTheHuntColorado.com. The North American model of wildlife conservation is the greatest conservation model in the world. It's a success story that should be shared and celebrated because everybody is a part of it. So we're here for another episode of Through the Gates to Save the Hunt, and we've got a special guest. Actually, we've got two special guests in studio today, and Devin Jaffe, that I've dealt with over the last couple of years with Outdoorsman Days, and Devin is a Master Falconer, and she's also the president for the High Plains Falconers, and she brought one of her comrades in arms, so to speak. I mean, I guess you don't own any of these at some degree. They work for you and in tandem with you, correct?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
So Devin, go ahead and introduce yourself on top of what I did, and we'll get a little bit of conversation about the bird and about the falconry side of things, and just get into an in-depth conversation about why we're even here today. So go ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah, so thanks for having us. My name is Devin. I'm a Master Falconer. So I am licensed to hunt game during hunting season with trained raptors. So instead of us using a gun or a bow and arrow, we have trained hunting partners. So I have Prima here. She's a Harris hawk. She's 3 years old. I breed Harris hawks. So I hunted with her parents for 6 years. And then they started making eyes at each other. So I put them together and they raised chicks. So now I have Prima. She's a phenomenal hunter. She also hunts with my yellow lab, Dash. So we'll work together with dogs and birds sometimes to hunt game. Super exciting.
And then she's not the only bird of prey that you have.
No, I actually hunt with 3 different species. I hunt with her as a Harris hawk. So mostly cottontails, quail, pheasant, chucker if we're lucky, jackrabbits. I also hunt with a golden eagle, which mostly we're going for jackrabbits, but lately it's been a lot of cottontails. A lot of our jacks down south got wiped out by that hemorrhagic disease, but she also caught a duck randomly, so that was exciting.
Really?
Yeah, that was fun. And then I also very non-traditionally hunt with a great horned owl. And owls are not a traditional falconry bird for multiple reasons. One, of course, they're mostly active at nighttime. Yep. And we have the same restrictions. You know, we can't go hunting after dark, of course, just like everybody else, you know, besides fur bears and stuff, which I'm not going to get into. But owls also are not quite as agile as our hawks and falcons. So I do hunt jackrabbits with him. He chases them, which is really fun to watch. But you know how they do that zigzag thing and they zig and then they jump, you know, like 5 feet in the air. He just doesn't have the agility to turn and get him. But he's deadly on cottontails. So it's pretty exciting. Yeah.
And you have the Falconry Club that you're in.
Yep.
And how many people are in that?
We have about 30 members right now, I think, through High Plains Falconers. Yeah. And I would say about a third of us are licensed falconers and the rest are folks that are interested in getting into the sport. And so that's always what I recommend to people, too. If you're interested in ever getting into falconry, reaching out to a falconry club. We have 2 of them here in Colorado, the Colorado Hawking Club and then High Plains Falconers. You can be a member of both if you want. And she's checking out the ceiling now. It's really exciting. She's like, what's up there? And our club has our meetup, kind of our hangout where we all get together and have lunch and, you know, talk about our birds is February 22nd down the Penrose area. And so if anyone were interested, you know, reach out to us, you know, through our website, highplainsfalconers.com. Join the club and come out and check it out. Go out with different falconers, see how we work our birds, see what it really is like. I typically tell people to avoid a lot of YouTube channels. Yeah. There's some really good ones.
And not so
good ones.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we know that happens in every sport, every hobby, everything. But it's a great way to go out, meet other people that are same, you know, similar mindsets where we want to hunt with our birds, hunt with our dogs, and participate in the oldest recorded sport in the world.
So, yeah, and it is the oldest sport in the world. I mean, if you go back to the medieval times into Mongolia, and you see they've been, it makes me wonder how they actually did what they did at that point in time. They probably didn't have they maybe had a breeding program, but they had to start from somewhere to get a breeding program.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating to think about back then. Like, now we have all of our fancy GPS trackers and our scales and all this new updated equipment. And I think back then, like, they didn't have any of that kind of stuff. So it makes you wonder.
So we're going to get to a variety of different conversations about this because there's so much overlap, but there's so much traditional heritage component to this. And so when you hunt with Prima, is that for yourself or is it for her?
That's a great question. And this is one of those where we share the food because it's a partnership. So if we go out and catch a rabbit, that rabbit has to be prepared for human consumption, just like any other, game animal that we would be hunting. So she is allowed to eat the non-human edible parts, which is what she really likes anyway, the head, the lower legs, and the guts. Because really, her favorite part is the liver and then the heart.
Hey, she sounds like Sarah.
The good stuff.
I just met Sarah today, so I could just don't kick me.
Prima 2.0, exactly.
And so you're working as a team, but then you mentioned the dog too.
Yeah. Yep. So Dash, his job, we have trained him. He's trained for gun, work and stuff as well, but also for hunting and flushing rabbits. So we use rabbit-scented lures and things like that. I have one of those RC cars that I run around through the field so he can learn how to chase stuff. And then his job is to flush the rabbits because he has that amazing sense of smell. Most raptors, like her, don't have a very developed sense of smell. So she's not using her nose to hunt like the dog would be. She's using her eyes. She has, we theorize, 12 times better distance vision than what we have as humans, which would be super epic. She's like, I'm checking out everything in here. She could see a spider on this wall.
She sees me 12 times bigger.
Yeah, exactly. She's like, wow, it's great in here. But yeah, so his job is to go out, flush the rabbit, and then she comes down and catches the rabbit, and then we share it together. I don't give my dog
the Dash doesn't get any of it.
Yeah, I don't give him any of that. He is very interested in it.
He gets other treats.
He gets other treats, yeah. And he'll kind of like lick, the hair or whatever a little bit because he likes to lick everything. I always say he can't hold his liquor. He licks everything. He'd lick this table. He'd lick the floor. But he licks the bird sometimes too, which she's like, oh, this is weird. But I carry special little dog treats and stuff for him. So if he does flush a rabbit, whether we catch it or not, he still gets a reward. Same for her. Even if we flush game and she doesn't catch it, which happens sometimes, right? We have a 1 out of 10 chance of catching something. So our success rate compared to other hunters is very, very low. So 1 out of 10 slips, we call it. So a slip is when the bird leaves the glove. So we might flush 10 different times and not get anything also. So we're not taking huge amounts of game or anything like that. But even if she does chase something, she still gets a reward for doing that. So it's all about that positive reinforcement. You did something amazing. This is so exciting. And we get excited too. Sometimes I get made fun of in the field because I'm like, go, Prima, go. Yeah, it's great. This is awesome. I'm like a cheerleader. And everybody's like, oh, you're so obnoxious. I'm like, I think that she gets excited, just like the dogs get really excited. Like, good job, Dash. And he gets all excited and wags his tail. I think these guys get excited too when we get excited. So I do it anyway, whether I'm obnoxious or not. And she comes back and gets her treat, and we have a great time.
What interaction do these birds have with other wild birds?
Oh, that's a really good question. We stay away from other wild birds. So if we are out in a field and I see a wild red-tailed hawk or a golden eagle or something flying over, we leave. And that's because now we're in that other bird's territory. I don't want to stress out that other bird, especially if there's a pair hanging out there. And I don't want that. Yeah. I don't want that other bird to come down and harm or kill one of my birds. So these wild birds we see, I call her down, we pack up and head out.
And you call her down how?
We use a lure. And I should have brought one, but it kind of looks like a fake bird or a rabbit, like a poof ball, like the camera poof ball.
That's what she keeps looking over there.
Yeah, she's like, that was fun. Like a poof ball on a string. And we train the birds to do their recall to that lure. Sometimes with the falcons, we use the lure to build muscle strength to get them to go up and up and up. For her, I use it as this recall. So anytime she hits the lure, she gets what we call the jackpot prize. So in animal training, the last session or the last trained behavior that you're going for of that session or that day, they get that jackpot reward. So she gets her biggest reward, not necessarily for flying back to the glove, but for coming into that lure. That teaches her, okay, if I see that lure come out and I hear that specific whistle for that lure, because I only use that one whistle for that one lure, that's it, that recall, she sees that. She knows if she comes over, touches the lure with any part of her body, I'm going to blow a long whistle, she jumps up to the glove and she gets a really big reward, a really big prize.
Oh, cool.
But that helps me get her immediately out of harm's way. Yeah. You got to get over here now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they,
she's good at it.
You ever had a bird around a drone?
I actually have a falcon that is trained to fly to a drone. Sometimes we'll use those to send the drone up with the lure. It trains them to go higher and higher and higher. She's never been, well, I shouldn't say that. She's had drones flow over when we've been at like festivals and things where she kind of looks and then just looks back like, all right, it's something else flying over. But I don't know. I think it'd be really fascinating to see what she would think about a drone also.
Because you were at Outdoorsman Days last year, and there was a couple guys flying drones around just for videography.
Yeah.
And I mean, you guys are always a hit wherever you go.
Thanks.
You were at the ISC Sports Show, which I got to give you credit. I mean, to have the birds there with, I don't know, 100,000 people over 3 days or 4 days.
Yeah.
With the barking dogs that you have next to you.
Yep.
I was trying to do a presentation on the stage over there, and the barking dogs, I was like, why did they have to schedule me right now when they're doing the barking dog training? And you're like right across. I mean, you're like 8 feet from there.
Yeah.
But the birds don't really mind the barking dogs.
Nope, they don't. We have some birds that were there. We had a few of our members there that brought their birds, and some of those birds had never been exposed to dogs before. So that was actually a really good way to get them exposed. Like, these dogs aren't going to hurt you, because maybe ultimately the folks that brought their birds too might want to train with a dog someday. She doesn't care because she's been raised around dogs. So she's like, whatever. But if it's a little one, I mean, like weenie dog size or smaller, it's like, ooh.
It's a fur ball.
That looks delicious. Looks just like that camera puff. I'm going to eat it. Right. So we do have to watch out for that. But big dog, she's totally cool with. So,
are you going to Mile High Hunt and Fish Expo?
I don't know. I haven't heard from them yet.
No?
I went out there last year and did a presentation, and it was fantastic. I met another falconer there too that now we've become friends, so that was super exciting. But I actually haven't heard from them yet this year.
I'll make a phone call here shortly and see what we can do to try to put you back in touch with those guys.
Thanks. Yeah, I had a lot of fun up there.
Yeah.
It was great.
So, what caused you to get into this?
It's kind of silly, and I'm going to be a nerd for a minute, okay? I grew up wanting to be a paleontologist really bad. So I'm super into dinosaurs. I'm still super into dinosaurs. And, you know, I when I was old enough in middle school to sign up to do an internship through the middle school, I luckily was able to get in with the local paleontologist that was at Dino Depot. It used to be Dino Depot in Canyon, right?
Yeah.
So I got in with her, and it was fun, but I'm going to be honest, I was expecting like Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're all dressed up all cool and running around through the woods and like, there's a dinosaur skeleton here. Let's dig it. It wasn't quite that epic. It was fun. I learned a lot. She was actually the one that said, you know, you might look at working with dinosaurs that are living today. Birds. I was like, oh,
really?
Super cool. My mom has always been into bird watching. And so we've grown up watching birds. I was a 4-H kid forever, so showed poultry and rabbits and stuff. The last unit in 4-H wildlife, you can pick a raptor and a songbird to study. And so I made it up to that unit, and I picked the prairie falcon and the Steller's jay, and which are now my 2 favorite birds. And I love Harris hawks too, though. Don't, you know. She's my favorite. And so my parents took me to the Raptor Center over in Pueblo to see the birds there to help, you know, finish out my project. And I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. I want to work with these dinosaurs. And so I went into college. I actually went to school to be a performance major. So total change on that one.
Kind of opposite.
Kind of opposite. I stayed in music the whole time, but actually my sophomore year switched to biology because I ended up really liking the biology stuff. And our school, Hastings College, had a create your own major program where, as long as they offer the same programs that another school does, even if they don't have that degree, if you take those same classes, you can get that degree. So I started the wildlife management program for Hastings College, and now it's a degree that other students can sign up for and get. So I'm very excited about that. There are a lot of students going through it. We get some of the interns now that come over and learn. And so through that, I took internships with the Bureau of Land Management. I did that for 3 years, doing wildlife surveys, rangeland surveys, riparian habitat surveys, things like that. I loved it. It was amazing. And then I also did 4 years of Raptor Conservation Alliance. It used to be called Raptor Recovery Nebraska, and they've changed their name. And they do rescue, rehabilitation, and release, but they also have education birds. So birds that can't be released back to the wild, be it human imprinting where they start to associate with people, or they have maybe a wing injury or an eye injury, something that prevents them to go back to the wild, but can still have a happy, healthy, safe life in human care. And the rehab stuff was fascinating. Kudos to the people that can do that. It's not for me. Just like, I gotta clean myself and make sure I look good for the camera now. But I love...
got a feather out of place.
Yeah, I gotta fix this. Makeup call. But I love the education part. I love going out and talking to people about these birds because so many times you see them flying above you and it's just this dark silhouette that you can't make out. And you're like, I think that could be a hawk. Maybe it's an eagle. I don't know. So I also teach raptor identification courses. And I talk about, how do we tell what that silhouette is when it's flying over? Do you want to impress your friends? I'll show you how to identify these birds. So I've started doing education now. I've been doing it for over 20 years, taking birds out to teach schools, libraries, festivals, events, the expos and things like that. And that's what I really, really like. But through that, I grew up as a hunter. My dad was a big hunter with pheasants and ducks and elk and things like that. And he was friends with falconers also. So I got a little taste of that, a little bit of information. I was like, that's pretty cool. And through doing the education program, somebody was like, man, you should just go through and get your falconer license. I was like, oh, cool. So did my 2-year apprenticeship, worked my way up and fell in love with it. I absolutely love hunting with these birds. There's nothing like it. And even if we don't catch something, like I said, we have a very, very low catch rate compared to other hunters, right? Even if we don't catch something, it never gets old walking through that field, having a hawk follow me, right? So cool. It's just so amazing. It's so amazing to see her fly.
So you walk and you hunt and she does her stuff and back and forth. So it's not like you're carrying her out there. Really.
She's trained to follow. Harris hawks are a very versatile hunting bird. We can train them to hunt off the fist like this. So if I were, walking through a field, I can flush game or dash with flush game and she flies off the fist. They can do that. They can also be trained to fly off of a T-perch, which is what I use for hunting jackrabbits usually. Those like extendo paint roller things for the ceiling?
Yep.
I have one of those and I just don't have the paint roller. It's a perch. And so it can go whoop, really high up in the sky. And I've trained her and my owl actually, which is weird, but he did it, to sit on this T-perch and then I could extend it really high up into the sky and then I can walk along. That allows them to see something much further and way before I would ever see it, of course, being down here with, human vision. But Harris hawks also are very, very easy to teach following. So if I'm walking through a forest, maybe hunting squirrels, something like that, she'll just go from tree to tree to tree to tree to tree and follow me. She never really lets me get more than 100 feet away from her. Harris hawks are a social bird. We call them the wolves of the sky or the wolf pack of the air. They're extremely intelligent and they're social. The oldest female is the one that's in charge of the group. And there could be groups of 3, 5, I think up to 13, even more, have been reported hunting and working together. So even as falconers, if I have a Harris hawk and you have a Harris hawk and you've got a Harris hawk, we could all call each other up one morning and say, hey, do you guys want to go out hunting? All we have to do is put our birds out like this next to each other for a couple minutes. They'll do kind of a little kind of sound. They sound kind of like a crow. And they'll figure out, all right, I'm in charge and then you're next and you're at the bottom of the stack here. Sorry. And then they'll go out and hunt together, even though those birds have never seen each other before that moment. And then they will share the game, which is really fascinating. So even if she doesn't have any babies, for example, if she were a wild hawk, she will help feed another bird in the group's babies too.
Really?
Pretty cool. Yeah.
Well,
they're a very fascinating bird to watch.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What happens when there's no hunting seasons?
Well, during the off season, the bird is put up to molt. So typically, these guys would be molting, losing their old feathers, growing their new feathers during the summer. So we want to feed our birds up. So that's where that saying, I'm fed up with you, comes from. That's falconry terminology. So we say the bird is fed up. When the bird is fed up, which means they're full, they don't really want to do anything with us. Think about eating a big Thanksgiving dinner and you're all like, ugh, slothy and grouchy and you just want to take a nap, right? Well, same for these guys. They eat a whole bunch of food and they're like, well, I don't want to hang out with you right now. I'm going to sit here and digest. So during the summertime, after hunting season, we will feed our birds up, and then we put them in their chambers. They can fly around, do whatever they want to do. We've got swings in our chambers. The Harris hawks love to swing like a parrot.
Yeah.
So she'll sit on there and swing, and look outside and, play. We get a lot of enrichment stuff for them to play with, like those Kong toys, that you have for, we put mice, like, it's dead mice, of course, but like a dead mouse or something in there, and she'll play around with that and eat it. But they're molting. We want them to get the best possible molt that they can. So having a very, very nutritious, fattening diet during that time. We give them extra vitamins and things too. So they lose those old feathers, grow in their new ones so that they're ready for the next season after that.
How long does that take?
It could take a few months, and not all birds will molt all of their feathers for that season. Sometimes eagles will only molt a handful, and then
they still need to fly.
Exactly.
So it's weird because with the goose mitigation that we do, those birds will molt to the point where they can't fly.
Yeah.
Same with ducks.
Yep.
And if anybody that raises poultry, chickens will almost molt completely to the point that they don't look alive. They just look like they're completely naked.
Yes.
But these guys still have to fly.
They still fly.
So they're losing what feathers do they lose?
So they'll molt out some body feathers, and it's kind of funny when they're doing it. It just all of a sudden happens, and it's like a snow globe in their mews. We call it a mews, the aviary that they're in. And so they're losing their body feathers, but the way that they molt their flight feathers is very interesting. So if she loses the first primary on this wing, which are the feathers that stick out the furthest like fingers, if she loses the first primary on this wing, she'll lose that one at the same time. And then once that one grows in, she might lose like the next one on either side. So they're still balanced.
Staggered. Mm-hmm. Very staggered.
Yep. So we're losing the same time, but we wouldn't lose like all three of these front ones at the same time because then we wouldn't be able to steer. So it's really, really fascinating how they do it. The tail is the same. She's not going to lose all of her tail feathers at the same time. She might lose one on this side, one on this side. Once they're about halfway in, then maybe she'll lose the next one on the inside. Once those are about halfway in, then she'll lose the next one. So it's a progression so that they can still fly and steer and
And they're still eating that whole time. It's just they don't eat as much.
Exactly.
It's not like they're like a snake. I have snakes for snake awareness training classes and information education type stuff. When that snake decides he's not going to eat, I mean, I go to gopher snake that from literally from 1st of November, latter part of October to the 1st of November, he is inactive and lethargic until April or May.
Yeah.
I mean, and then he'll pig out, for about 5 months. But for 7 months, you think you're going to die.
Yeah.
I'm
just going to sit here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think, so that was a question, bringing up the snakes. The birds will eat the snakes.
They will, but we train them specifically, or at least I should say, I train my birds to stay away from snakes. And the reason is, yes, a Harris hawk in the wild could naturally hunt, a gopher snake or a rattlesnake. But when we're out hunting with them, I don't want her to come down and catch a snake because I don't want it to be a rattlesnake. Because she could get bit, but also if I'm in there trying to help her,
then I
could get bit. Yeah. So we avoid snakes. I don't ever feed any of my birds snakes, anything like that, anything that could look like a snake. Just like we don't want to be hunting mice, rats, things like that, right? So if she does, because she will randomly she caught a lizard a couple months ago. I was like, what are we still doing out and about? But okay. She went down, caught a lizard. I just let her eat it. But that's not something I'm going to like, good job, you get a reward. Right. This is awesome, because we don't want to be hunting lizards. So we can train our birds off of things. If she catches a mouse or a vole, I let her eat it, but I'm not going to reward her for it, and I'm not going to say anything. I just pick her up and we keep going. Because then she's smart enough to realize, when I caught that mouse, I didn't get a reward for it. But when I caught that squirrel, I did. So we can train them off of snakes that way too. If you catch something like a snake, you're not going to be rewarded for it. But if you catch a rabbit, you get a reward.
So what's the primary reason they're not rewarding for mice and voles and gophers or whatever?
I want her to be like, well, I didn't get the prize that I wanted, because after they catch something, I'm going to give her a really big prize. Like, this is awesome, right? So usually what I use are, Coturnix quail. I'll use a skinned quail breast, a big one, and I'll put that on my glove. So after she catches something, congratulations, yay, she gets to eat a little bit. And then I show her that quail breast. She's smart enough to realize that it's going to take more energy to sit here and pluck this rabbit or pheasant or whatever it is than it is just to jump up to my glove and eat that already prepared quail breast. She doesn't get that quail breast if she catches something I don't want her to catch.
Okay.
So very similar to hunting dogs, where if we're moving too suddenly or we run when we're not supposed to, you don't get your treat for it. And they'll realize, oh, I have to wait for the command, right? Same for these guys. Yeah.
And are the owl and the eagle that you have, are they as trained as well?
No. The owl is good, but owls are what we consider a primitive predator, where this and the eagle would be considered advanced predators. So a Harris hawk and an eagle would be very, very similar. When the eagle catches something, it's very strange. When the eagle catches something, it's almost like this overload of adrenaline, and she'll just sit there on it like, and her eyes are all big and her hackles are up, and she's like, weird. It's like this weird trance, and I cannot walk close to her while she's in that trance. I have to just wait. And then once she's kind of like, okay, that was cool. It's like an adrenaline rush. And once she calms down, I can walk in. She's actually very sweet. The eagle will let me reach in with my bare hands and trade her game.
Really?
Right? This bird, I don't use my bare hands. She's extremely sweet, but not when she's like, whoa, all excited about chasing something.
She's all psyched out.
She's all psyched out. The owl, he's, like I said, a primitive predator. So when we think about this bird or the eagle, they are processing a lot of what they're doing, right? An owl is already built as a perfect predator, so it doesn't have to have the thought processing power that a bird like this has. If we think about an owl, and that's the best way I can describe it, a great horned owl can just sit in a tree. They're hunting with their ears. They hear a mouse. They basically fall out of the tree onto their prey and eat it and just fly back up, right? So there's not as much processing for them because they already have all those amazing tools on their body to help them, which so does she as well. But the owls also have incredible hearing. They have excellent night vision, and they have completely silent flight. So that mouse would never hear that owl coming down. So they just drop out of the sky, eat their prey. So if he catches something, it is like a 45-minute to an hour process of, what do I do with it now? And owls have these really big poofy belly feathers that come out. I call it their skirting. So after he catches something, he'll sit on it. Like he's real excited about it. And he puts his skirting over it and just sits there. And then there's like, I don't know what we're doing for 45 minutes. So usually what I have to do, because he'll trade off sometimes, for his quail breast. But sometimes he's like, nope, I'm just going to cover it with my skirt. And I literally just have to pick him and whatever it is up and just walk all the way out and just wait until he's like, okay, yeah, I'll share with you. But where this bird, that whole process takes like 5 minutes, 45, right? Really? So it is a process with the owl, which I love owls. But yeah, I've taken a few people out with him to watch and I'm like, oh, this is kind of slow. I'm like, yep.
Do you have to, when you have Prima out, can you have one of the other ones out at the same time, or are these all
individuals?
Yeah.
So I can have her out with another Harris hawk, but if I had her out with the owl, she's going to try to kill the owl.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's definitely, most raptors are not very friendly with each other. We do see social species, like the Harris hawks are social. We'll see bald eagles sometimes hanging out in groups. Vultures, of course, are very social. But most of your hawks and falcons are kind of like, I hang out with my mate and like that's it, right? Everybody else can just stay over there.
What's the bells for?
Good job, Prima. The bell helps me locate where she is. If she were to land in some tall grass, she's down on the ground, I might not be able to see her. But if she's moving around, I can hear that bell. So if you hear anybody say, I'll be there with bells on, that's actually falconry terminology. We say that because, hey, we're ready to go. Our bird's ready because she's got bells on. And we don't use bells on all of our birds. Typically, the big falcons, we don't use bells. We don't need them. Those birds are coming from so high out of the sky. We see what's going on. The bird's right there, right? But for a bird like this, if we're in a forest, again, if we're going after squirrels, we're in those tall trees, might not be able to see her, but I can hear when she's following with these bells. And if we're flying multiple Harris hawks, we typically have different pitched bells on each bird. So I can hear when Pharaoh is flying or when Phoenix is flying or when Prima is flying by having a different pitched bell. So I never have to really turn around and look to see, who's coming behind me. I already know which bell it is. Now, one thing that people love to ask, and so I like to always nip this one in the bud, doesn't the bell alert the game that the bird is coming? There is no rabbit on earth that knows what jingle bells mean. So it actually has the opposite effect where the rabbit's like,
What the hell's that?
Yeah. I'm like,
Santa Claus is coming.
Oh, it's Christmas. Yeah. So this just helps us with location. Now, we also will use telemetry. We use radio telemetry, and some of us, myself included, will also use GPS telemetry. This bird is not as important for, like I said, she doesn't really go more than 100 feet away from me, right? But the eagle definitely, and if I'm flying any big falcons or anything like that, we have radio trackers. So it's just a little tiny deal with a long antenna, and we can either attach it to, there's a second hole here on her grommet, which is on her anklet here. She's like, yep, that's mine. That attaches there, and then the antenna hangs down. My eagle and one of my other hawks has a backpack. So we have a little clip that goes in the backpack. They can wear that. The GPS sits there. Some of our little tiny birds, they'll put a little necklace on, so the antenna sits there. That helps us. So if our bird gets really far away or is in really dense brush and we can't see them, we can turn on that radio telemetry or the GPS telemetry. The GPS will walk us right to the bird. Like, your bird is right here. And it's funny, it says, caution, bird is near. I'm like, oh, thank goodness. I know. But the other one, the radio one, will beep. It's like playing the hot and cold game. So if you're facing away from your bird, it's a real quiet beeping. It's kind of like slow and sad. And then as you get closer to them, the beeping increases, it gets louder, and it's like, yeah, you're going the right direction. And it works. I've had to use it a couple times on different chases where we get into some thick brush. I'm like, I have no idea where my bird went. I can't hear the bell.
It's interesting you talk about the GPS and stuff, because some groups are criticizing the utilization of GPS tracking devices and collars for hound dogs and for beagle dogs, and I bet they don't know that you're using them for these. But some of those same groups are criticizing you for the utilization of the bird, or whether it's the ownership or you're cheating the bird out of a meal, or you're turning around and trying to utilize something for your particular gain. I mean, you mentioned that you work as a team, but in today's environment. And we'll get into other discussions. But today's environment, the GPS side of things, the electronic side of things, is almost imperative, not only for the safety of the animal, but for the safety of you being able to be compliant with laws, rules, and regulations of where you're going, because you are a sportswoman. And the bird is your tool. Just like a houndsman has a hound as a tool. The bird doesn't understand that. It has no knowledge. The bird goes out and kills, grabs, and then you guys get to share it. How much, when do you think the GPS side of things, the electronic side of things came into play? 10 years, 15 years, 30 years?
We haven't had it very long. It was developed for dogs way before us. So ours is super recent, and so recent that they still haven't released it for Android yet. And Android is what I have. I have the beta version. So I don't rely on my GPS unit, because sometimes it'll run and then sometimes it's like, oh, you need to get an iPhone instead. And then it just turns off. I'm like, oh, sorry. So ours is very, very new, and it's still being developed, like I said. So I just have a beta version for Android. But without that GPS, because when we're doing education programs, if we're flying some of our ed birds as well, that GPS lets me know exactly where my bird is. I don't want that bird to get into trouble. I don't want them to fly, too close to a fence or somebody's home or a vehicle or something like that. That GPS, that telemetry, we absolutely have to have it, because I don't want to lose this bird.
Right.
I mean, I don't have kids. Like, this is my child, right? I treat my birds, as, they're part of the family, because they are. And
just like hounds are to most houndsmen.
Absolutely.
Just like beagles are to a rabbit hunter, and a waterfowl dog is to a waterfowler.
Absolutely.
People don't understand that. They act like that you're mistreating the animal. And the animal was actually created, not just bred, but created for that purpose. And for you to be part, the bird is allowing you to be part of its life, just what you're allowing it to be part of yours.
Exactly. And that's the thing. This is a bird that was hatched and raised at my facility. She's not a human imprint. She was raised by her parents, right? And her parents are hunting birds as well. So they all know, and it's a team. She has the option when she's out there hunting. Any of our birds have the option to leave, because when we're out hunting, all this stuff comes off, right? We don't want to create drag or anything like that. So if she's out and about and she decides like, I don't want you anymore. And that happens to falconers sometimes, where their birds just like,
they just go.
Thanks for the food, peace, and they're gone, and that's it. But that bird also can survive back in the wild, because a lot of times they're from the wild, right? We have Harris hawks in the wild. Not really here in Colorado, right? They're desert Southwest. But, a bird could get out and survive in the wild, but we don't want that to happen if it's our partner, right? This bird has a gold band. She's registered with Fish and Wildlife Service. If she were to ever get away from me and end up, say, at a rehab facility, that rehabber can call Fish and Wildlife Service and say, hey, I've got a Harris hawk here, band number, and they can say, oh, that's Devin's bird, and we can be reunited. That happens all the time. I heard a story of a falconer whose telemetry stopped. Something happened, the battery died, it got out of range, whatever. And he was here in Colorado. His falcon was picked up in California 10 years later. Yep, 10 years later, reunited.
Really?
Yeah, so cool. Like, it's so cool. And these birds, anybody that says we abuse these birds or mistreat them doesn't understand this world. And that's why I tell people also to be very, very careful what you see on social media and what you see on YouTube. There are, of course, there are bad people in every sport, every hobby,
every walk of life,
everything that you can be involved in, right? And so, yeah, there are a lot of these where you see, and this is probably not going to be a very popular comment, but owls lined up at a cafe and people are just petting them, right? That is illegal here in the U.S., right? So when we see videos like that, people are like, those poor owls. That's not falconers. That's not us. Yeah. That's not what we're doing. I mean, I have a veterinarian that comes on site. We have 2 vets that work with us. Both of them are, good stretching, certified raptor specialist. One of our vets is also a falconer and has been for like 50 years, 60 years, I think now. Our birds get vaccinated against viruses and illness. We do malaria preventative. My barns, also my aviaries, are temperature controlled because my birds are super spoiled. Because this is a bird that, if we're out here and it's super cold, she doesn't have all the down, all the fluff that a native red-tailed hawk would have, right? Because this is a species that specifically lives. There we go. She's like, I just got lighter. It lives in the desert, right? So if it's below 35 degrees, I'm not going to take her outside. It's too cold. She gets to stay in her nice, warm, little heated enclosure and enjoy watching, everything that's running around outside. But I'm one of those people, too, that, man, this bird has a hangnail and I'm in the emergency room. Like I said, this is like my child. We put so much time, energy, and money into our hunting partners. I would hate to see something happen to her, right? And
I have to think, just like anybody that uses a dog to be able to pursue game, the amount of money that you spend on that dog or that hawk or that eagle for 365 days a year, so you can actually only use it in generality for the duration of the season.
Yep.
That's a full-time endeavor that most people don't recognize. They think that you're doing it, and for 365 days a year, you're out there running around and chasing and killing stuff. That's not the case.
Nope.
And so when you have you're a master falconer, you have a license, you have to go through a class, and you have to get education. And I don't know if there's continued credits or what you got to do, but if you want to upgrade to different classifications, then you probably need to do something different.
Yep.
Correct?
Yep. There's a whole process. So at minimum, to get into this, you have to do a 2-year apprenticeship. And I say minimum because it might take 3 years, might take 4, might take 5, totally depends. You have to take a test with Parks and Wildlife. It's 100 questions. It's a computer-generated test, so there might be 1,000 questions that it pulls 100 from. So I might have a completely different test than what you have.
Yeah.
And it's questions on, can you draw the bird equipment? How do we put the equipment on safely? Can you identify a juvenile Swainson's hawk versus a juvenile red-tailed hawk, species which as juveniles could look very similar, especially from a distance? What temperatures can a Harris hawk withstand outdoors? What diseases do we have to watch out for, especially here in Colorado? What medications do you need to keep on hand? So you have to pass that test with an 80% or better. You have to find someone who's going to sponsor you. So you have to find either I believe it's a 3-year general class falconer or a master class falconer who is going to train you one-on-one for that minimum of 2 years. You're learning about these birds. You're learning how to identify them, how to take care of them. You're learning how to find game and how to set your bird up for success. That's what we want. We want her to be successful. We want her to live a happy life. My job as a master falconer is not to pump out more falconers. My job is to make sure that if someone comes to me and wants to be sponsored, they have to prove Now, they're going to do this, their due diligence. We take the test. We've got to study. You've got to come to me with a base knowledge, at least, of what the sport is. And then you have to do right by the bird. If you're not going to do right by the bird, I will fire you. And I fired 3 apprentices already. Yep. I think I've passed 3 and fired 3. And I have 1 right now who's doing awesome. But
so you're stringent.
Very.
Yeah.
Yes.
But when they're doing that, they're coming to utilize and learn from your birds. It's not they have their own birds yet because they're not. They're just apprentices.
Right. So during that apprenticeship, you can get your bird. And so you're learning. So you have to go take that test. You have to build your muse. You have to get all of your equipment. And then CPW has to come out and inspect everything and say, this looks good, or we need a couple tweaks here. And then they'll give you a certain amount of time to fix whatever, get a certain piece of equipment that you're missing. And then they'll come back out and inspect. If you pass, they'll give you your permit. We used to have a really cool falconry license. It was like this embossed, like thick paper with a really, the cool CPW logo on it. But just like everybody else, we have to carry our permit with us everywhere we go in the field, right? Well, if you're like me and everything gets really gross and you throw it in the washing machine, especially if you're on a trip and you're in a hotel, everything just gets destroyed, right? Yeah. And those certificates are so big, they were too hard to carry anywhere. So now we get the same ones that are like everybody else, where they're like those long green kind of receipt deals. And then you write your HIP number at the bottom and all of that.
Has no historical significance to it. It's just a piece of plastic paper.
It's just a piece of plastic paper. But at least now it's mostly waterproof.
Yeah.
Because I destroyed many of them. But then, as an apprentice, you are working with your sponsor, and we trap a juvenile bird from the wild. This is where people get a little squidgy about it, so I'm going to explain why and why it's important. Here in Colorado, and states are different, but here in Colorado, as an apprentice, you can only have 1 bird. You cannot have an imprinted bird. You can have a human-raised bird or a captive-bred bird. We don't like the word captive. It's bird raised in human care. But you will not move on from your apprenticeship. You have to show me that you can train a bird from scratch. So we can go out and trap either a juvenile red-tailed hawk or a juvenile American kestrel. Most of us won't sponsor apprentices for a kestrel. They're extremely difficult to work with because they have a very, very fast metabolism. So little bird, lots of energy, right? Which you would think, they're small and cute, so they must be easy. No. Red-tailed hawk, Harris hawk, way easier. There are masters that can't fly kestrels successfully. Really? So we usually will be sponsoring you for a juvenile red-tailed hawk. Why a juvenile? We never want to take a bird that could potentially be having a mate somewhere. Right? Red-tailed hawks typically don't choose a mate until after a year old. And as a juvenile, they look nothing like the adult. So it's very easy for us to identify that bird because red-tailed hawks actually don't get their red tail until they're a year old. So as a juvenile, they have a brown kind of stripy tail. The juvenile red tails also usually have yellow eyes, and then the adults have dark brown eyes. So we can tell juvenile, adult. So it'd be very unethical for us to take an adult bird. We take that juvenile bird, we work with them so they can sit just like this and become a great hunting partner. Now, this is personal preference, but all my apprentices have done this. At the end of the hunting season, we fatten the birds up, over a few weeks of time, and then we cut all their equipment off and we release them back to the wild. People don't realize that we do that. A red-tailed hawk in the wild has a 10% chance of making it past their first year.
Really?
That's it. 10% chance.
What's the reasons?
Barbed wire fences, people that let cats outdoors, rodenticide, those big windmill deals, vehicle strikes, storms, other predators, disease. And we have to be honest, just like humans, like kids are dumb, right? You got to learn, right? We were all a child at one point. You did something stupid and you learned from it.
Or you died.
Or you died. Exactly.
Yeah.
So for those hawks, sometimes that, stupid mistake ends in death, right? And so we see a very low number of those birds. Now, when they get past that, red-tailed hawks in the wild can live into their 20s, right? So now that bird has been with a falconer, they jump over a 75% chance. Why? Because we have now trained that bird to not only hunt mice and rats, which is what they're typically hunting, we've trained them to hunt rabbits and pheasants and quail and jackrabbits. And over time, and this has been proven in different species now, generational teaching, right? Generational memory. Hopefully, that red tail, then after we release it, will partner up with a mate, and the juveniles that they have, that bird that came from the falconer will teach those juveniles also how to hunt rabbits, and pheasants and quail. So now these birds have a better chance at surviving than the birds that are only hunting mice and rats. It is thanks to falconers that 3 raptors still exist here in the U.S. today. And that's the peregrine falcon, the bald eagle, which is our national bird, and the California condor. If it weren't for falconers like us, those birds would not be here. Years ago, when DDT, pesticide chemical, was in our systems, people used it. They didn't realize it was going to have such a severe impact on those 3 birds. And it didn't cause problems really for the adult birds, but it was the female's ability to produce thickened eggshells. So the female birds would, consume maybe a duck that has, eaten plants that had the DDT in them from the water or the soil system. That female peregrine lays eggs with thin eggshells. She tries to incubate the eggs crack. So a bunch of falconers got together and said, man, we can't lose this peregrine falcon or the eagle or the condor. What can we do? Got permission. They started a program called the Peregrine Fund, which is headquartered in Boise, Idaho. And they got permission to go out, trap these wild birds, bring them into breeding facilities, raise them in a safe environment, and release them back to the wild. Thanks to that project, thanks to falconers, the bald eagle and the peregrine falcon have made more than a 100% comeback. They've been completely removed from the endangered species list and completely removed from the threatened species list. California condor, still struggling. But the problem is they don't breed as often as those other birds, and they typically only have 1 egg at a time. So much slower. They're still making progress.
How long ago was that?
This was in 70s. I believe 76 is when DDT was banned.
Migratory Bird Act.
Right after.
Yeah.
Yep. So right around that same time is when everything was happening. And that's when falconers were like, oh, man, we can't let this happen. We've got this Migratory Bird Act working. Now we've got DDT. We got to save these birds. So falconers are conservationists. Not only are we helping with the predators, we also help with the prey species. The grouse programs and prairie chickens, a lot of those are being headed up by falconers because we're out there in the field watching these birds disappear. Man, this field used to have, a bunch of prairie chickens out here. What's happening? Then we find, something's wrong with the environment. Okay. Are we allowed to breed them and release them back to the wild? Yes, we are. So there are folks that are out there doing these projects right now, which is super, super exciting. I think people forget that part, that hunters are conservationists. And like I said, there are always bad apples in everything that you're in, right? But the falconers that I interact with and associate with, all of us are very into conservation, teaching people about these birds and how we can help them in the wild. We get these people that don't want us hunting with these birds, but they let cats run around outdoors.
Yeah.
Cats decimate
and
wildlife
feed
species.
Birds, wild bird feed, and then let the neighborhood cats come in and feed off the birds.
Exactly. And it's just so sad. I mean, just thousands and thousands of birds every year, including our American kestrels, the little falcons, are killed by cats running around outdoors. And so I teach that. There are other ways that you can entertain your cat. They do not have to go outside. And if you do want them to go outside, build a catio. I've got friends that have catios. They're super, super cool. Let your cat hang out there. Train your cat. I had a cat for 18 years that I trained to walk on a leash, just like a dog. So walked her on a harness, boom, 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 went outside, had a grand old time, and then went back inside. So I'm very, very against outdoor cats running free through the neighborhood. Barn cats, separate situation. So I'm not talking about barn cats, right? I'm talking about random neighborhood cats running around, just killing birds. And then people get upset when their cat gets eaten by the great horned owl or the coyote.
So there's a lot of vulnerabilities to birds of prey. There's probably always been vulnerabilities, but not as much now as when we have as many humans on the planet.
Right.
And you've got airplanes, and you've got wind farms, and you've got solar panels, and you've got vehicles, and a variety of everything. You mentioned rodenticides, and because I do pest control application, all of this goes hand in hand. And I think, and I just get your perspective, there's not an easy fix straight across the board to solve all of it and take stuff away.
No.
How do we educate the general public about the environment enough to say how it affects different things? Because when people talk about, and I know this because I do wildlife control as well, you talk about wind turbines. They kill a lot of stuff.
Yes.
They kill a lot of stuff. The average person doesn't realize that turbine's, the blades on that are turning like 180 miles an hour. 180 miles an hour.
Yep.
How fast does that bird fly?
not that fast.
Yeah.
45 miles an hour level flight when she's really putting on the gas.
Yeah, and even when you get into like bats and eagles and stuff, they cannot, the size of those turbines, the size of those blades, they cannot get away from it.
No.
We do prairie dog mitigation in locations where there are wind turbines. They're trying to keep the prairie dogs down so it doesn't attract the birds of prey in to turn around and eat the prairie dogs. There again, some of the I would consider extreme environmental-minded individuals that don't want me to do what I do and don't want Prima to do what she does, and you, they don't want us to harm the prairie dogs, but they want the green energy.
Yeah.
You can't have your cake and eat it too.
No.
And so the same token goes into, and I think our perspectives are similar, but correct me if I'm wrong. When you get into rodenticides are toxic to birds of prey. However, rodenticides and pest control application has its value in human society for rodents around food sources.
Yes.
For a variety of different reasons that I think even if somebody wants to eat carrots and kale for the rest of their life, rodents create a problem when they start defecating and urinating in food storage facilities. Yeah. So not to get too far on a tangent, but what's your feeling of how we incorporate proper health control and pest control when you're dealing with things that we have to do versus things that we want to do versus things that we need to do, especially when it comes into situations like birds of prey?
Absolutely. Yeah. Great question. So there's so many different things that we can do to maintain pest species. And one thing that I want to bring up too about mice, mouse control, people forget that we have hantavirus here in Colorado, which is terrifying. And
I had it.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
I contracted it in 2008.
Yep, and you're lucky because it's like a 2% survival rate? Yeah. So
I was one of the few.
There you go. I am absolutely petrified of hanta because we have it in our area down south, right?
Yep.
So there have to be ways to maintain mice around human food. We don't want to be eating things like that. There are some poisons that I have heard now that they've developed over the past few years that only affect the first animal that
first generation.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which they have been doing tests to make sure that they don't affect birds. I haven't heard a lot of the research on it, to be honest, because I haven't really dug into it.
It's not conclusive yet.
Okay, cool. Hopefully it becomes conclusive and they figure out that, it's totally fine for these guys. But there are a lot of other things we can do too, right, to get rid of rodents. So there are definitely areas that we can use these pest control situations in a safe area, right? So if we're in a giant warehouse, we don't have raptors coming in, we have to think about if that mouse or rat eats that rodenticide, how far is it going to go, right? Is it going to go way out in the field or is it going to die right there in the warehouse, right? Probably right there in the warehouse. I don't know. I'm no expert on that. But there's a lot of different things we can do with these guys. And, even at our facility, and I don't know how this is happening. I've got under my bird mews, I have like that teeny, like 1/4-inch hardware cloth run under the mews so that nothing can dig in. But all of a sudden we have deer mice, which are the hantavirus carriers. I don't know where they're coming from. So for us, we're kind of lucky because if the mice get in, the birds just eat them, which is super handy to have. But where I was going with that, with the rodents around, food and all that, when we talk about pest control and we specifically bring the cat, so I got to pull in the cat thing again, right? Having your cat indoors is what keeps mice out of your home.
Right.
Having your cat running around outside, people have this idea that, the mouse is going to smell a cat and it's not going to come in the house. No, that's not how it works. The cat has to be indoors. That's the whole point, right? Even having a cat in an area where there might be food, where the cat, of course, can't get in the food and, you don't have any issues, could help with rodent removal or, pest species.
And there's a different application for so much of this at so many different levels, too, because there again, we talk about, just as an example, about the green energy. Okay, well, that's great.
Yeah.
But until people see that there's a bunch of dead birds underneath the wind turbines, then they don't start to question the green energy side. And I'm not anti-green energy.
Sure.
But look at what happened when they were talking about the whales beaching themselves after they turn around and put the turbines in the ocean.
Yep.
There's secondary effects to wildlife and to the ecosystem that we're not fully cognizant of. And until we until we figure out some magic silver bullet that's going to fix all issues of everything, we have to figure out a way to adapt and modify. There's not a chicken coop in the world that doesn't have mice.
Exactly.
because chickens turn around and spread stuff everywhere.
Yep.
And so then you got the egg issue that goes along with it. You back up one step, avian influenza.
Yep.
You got to worry about that with these guys.
Oh my God, yeah.
I mean, there's more stuff out there that kills, wounds, maims, and injures things beyond what you and I do, what society does, because it's Earth. Yep. There's a variety of different things that we have to educate about, and it gets into, and I'm jumping around here because I want to cover so much of this, because you and I are similar. We come from similar backgrounds, different perspectives on different things, because I'm an expert on one field, you're an expert on another field, but both those overlap significantly because you're utilizing a tool to be able to go out and pursue wildlife and harvest that under a program that is structured and regulated under the North American model of wildlife conservation.
Yep.
And that's what funds the agency that we have to both adhere to. Yes. But then the sideline side of that is I'm affected by the Colorado Department of Agriculture because I have to get licensed and permitted underneath them, just like what you do for Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Yep. But there's an overlap and there's an underlap that both of those are deeply rooted and connected. Yes. Let me jump to something real quick. Lead. So a captured bird has to worry about lead as much as a wild bird. Yep. But we've gone to steel shot in a variety of different levels, but not at all levels.
Right.
And you have to be cognizant of not only what the bird eats, but whatever else something else ate or whatever else something had. Because you can have a pelletized shot that gets into a quail or a pheasant that didn't kill it.
Yep.
But you can also turn around and have, as far as the scavenger is concerned, a dead carcass that would have lead in it, or for some other reason it died, that the bird could be affected if it was to get into that.
Yes.
Give us an idea between all of the things that could harm the bird that are man-made or man-associated with, and how you as a falconer try to address all of that, realizing that there's a natural organic level of what we have to deal with, because you just said you don't want hantavirus. I can tell you right now, after me having it, you don't want hantavirus. I mean, I was laid up for 3 months and was on my deathbed for 2.5 of those 3 months.
Yep.
Give me your perspective on all the things that bird would have to worry about from the human side, but then the human benefit of what that bird can benefit off of.
Yes. So I'm going to go to lead then as the first one. Lead's a huge issue, and there are still hunters. She's totally like hanging out now.
Yeah, she's
she's
like a flamingo.
Great, you guys. I love this. Oh yes. Lead's a big problem. So we always say that if you can switch, you should. There's still people that are just hardcore. I'm never going to switch. I'm never going to change anything, right? But they don't think about how that affects birds like this. So if they shoot a deer, let's say, and they leave the gut pile, okay, and there are lead fragments in the gut pile, a teeny little like pepper fleck of lead can kill an eagle. It's so serious. And that eagle comes down, eats that gut pile, yum, 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 yum. And that bird, hopefully ends up at a rehab center so it can at least, die in peace, right? Otherwise, it's going to sit out there and just suffer with lead poisoning. And watching birds go through lead poisoning, I've seen it in person. It is horrible, but it is a very, very low success rate for recovery. If I'm out hunting with her, this is a huge reason I don't let her eat anything in the field, because if she goes out and catches, say, a squirrel that some kid tried to shoot with a BB that is a lead BB, even if it's a lead-coated BB, or the other way around, copper with the lead inside, whatever, she eats that, it'll kill her. So I don't let her eat anything in there. Like I said, she gets a little teeny piece of whatever I can see right there, and then she gets that quail breast that I know exactly where it came from. Because then I take something home. I don't want to, piece out and freeze this animal that's full of, somebody else's lead. Like, terrible. Like, luckily for me, I've never run into something like that, but I still don't, or like you said, we don't know what they've been eating. So if we catch a quail or something that's been eating, what's that? Crazy corn?
Oh yeah.
That stuff. We'll take her down too. So the wind turbines, another big one. Like you said, 180 to 200 miles an hour. Those are spinning. I have been under those before when we were up doing our eagles up in Wyoming at this ranch. This rancher actually employs eagle watchers. And so these guys, they're full from sunrise to sunset. Their full day is driving around and sitting in these areas where they can see every single turbine in the area. And as soon as they see a raptor coming into that area, they'll call the main tower and they'll shut whatever turbines down so the birds can fly through safely. Mm-hmm. But there are very, very few facilities that are able to do that.
Well,
right?
And they can't stop on a dime either. I mean, it's not like you push the button and it stops. I mean, it takes a long time for that to wind down, and it's costly for it to start back up. Mm-hmm. So some places aren't receptive to turn around and doing things because they're willing to take the collateral damage or the sacrifice for it.
Exactly.
Now, that being said, there's components of fines that are imposed on utility companies or wind turbine places that if they kill, then they get fined for a certain reason. But then there's a variance or a gray area in there. But those are things that are beyond comprehension to the average person about how some of that stuff plays into. Where do we need to be to make sure that people understand the volatility and the fragility of what birds of prey have and what they play into, and that's on a grand scale. And then I want to kind of get into a little bit of a discussion on the hunting side of it and the misinterpretation of that.
Yeah. So, people like to make judgments on emotions very quickly, and they don't have any background knowledge on these guys. My degree is in wildlife management. I've been teaching about birds for 20 years. I learn new stuff all the time, right? You're always learning something new. That's the fun. But there's some things that are tried and true and proven. These birds are helping us with pest control, right? These guys are out catching prairie dogs and eating them and catching the mice that could carry Hanta because they can't get it. We don't have to worry about it. They're taking out the rabbits that have tularemia, rabbit fever, which is here in Colorado. A lot of people don't realize we have that too, which is also scary. The rabbits that have papillomavirus, the jackalope disease. People don't believe me it's real. I've caught 2 rabbits that have it. And it's terrible. They will die a terrible death.
Yeah.
So these guys are helping with pest control as well. And I wish people would understand that more, and that you want that owl hanging out in your neighborhood. You want that red-tailed hawk hanging out in the field behind your home because they're helping keep those pest animals away from us and away from food sources, like you said. The green energy thing, like with our turbines, of course, wind companies now are allowed to kill a certain amount of raptors every single year, which is very frustrating.
Well, not intentionally.
Right.
I mean, it's not like they go out there
unintentional
it's not like they go out there with shotguns and start shooting raptors.
Yeah, exactly.
So we just want to clarify that.
Yes.
It's like a level of gray area or leniency that they're allowed.
Yeah.
And when you get into the energy side of it, I mean, because we do wildlife control, we get calls all the time because birds get electrocuted.
Yeah.
They are in locations which is just a giant perch, but they ground themselves and zap themselves.
Yep.
And there's things, because we are here, because we're on this planet, we can do the best that we can possibly do. But that doesn't mean that everything is going to live like the Chronicles of Narnia.
Right, exactly.
And so when I get criticism for what I do, which I often do because it's not the people that I'm doing it for. Right. It's the people that don't want me to do it for somebody else. Yeah. But oftentimes those people still call somebody else because they've got an issue themselves eventually. Not all of them, but some.
Yeah.
Whether it's wolves, whether it's mountain lions, whether it's birds of prey, there's collateral damage because of human existence. We are on this planet, and we could say that we want to live in harmony with wildlife. But there's a certain level that no matter what happens, and I had Martin Lowney with USDA Wildlife Services on here a couple weeks ago, and you should look at that podcast if you hadn't. But bird strikes at airports. I mean, not only do they do a tremendous amount of work to keep birds away, there's some lethality to what they do, but there's also lethality just for the bird turning around and running in, to a plane, as you've seen, and we talked about the Sully Sullenberg deal on the Hudson. Yeah. There's been issues and instances that have come up most recently about birds in conflict around airports and so forth. We've gotten to a point to where I think there's almost this division in the general public that people should be people and wildlife should be wildlife, and there's no interaction between the two. That's not the case whether it comes into you utilizing Prima as a tool and a partner, and also enjoying it yourself because you are the sportswoman. Yeah. It's not like Prima has the license.
Yeah.
You have to do that.
Yep.
Prima didn't have to have hunter education.
Nope.
Devin did.
Yep.
If you want to support a company that supported the efforts to defeat Proposition 127, then you need to support Davis Tent. Davis Tent has provided quality canvas goods for outdoorsmen for the last 50-plus years. For more information, go to davistent.com. If you want to support another business that was instrumental in helping us defeat Proposition 127, check out Salida Gun Shop. Salida Gun Shop in Salida, Colorado provides quality products, expertise, and knowledge from individuals that actually do what they sell. Go to salidagunshop.com. Listen to the advice of Cameron Haynes and support companies that are supporting your cause and your efforts. Minturn Anglers is one of those companies. Minturn Anglers provides product and fishing excursions in Colorado and are second to none. For more information, go to minturnanglers.com. There's 21 pages of falconry regulations in the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Regulation Book. 21 pages. And I'm sure, and I've been around enough, that you guys have modified and adapted some of those just because of a variety of different circumstances. But I wanted to talk about real quick that the examinations and the licensing that you mentioned, and then when you get into the general license, and then you have the master license, and then you have the facilities and equipment.
Yep.
And you have the inspection of facilities and equipment, like you mentioned, capturing and banding raptors. You've got a variety of different terminology and lingo that goes into that. Provisions of take.
Yep.
You've got the sale and purchase.
Yep.
Caretaking of falconry raptors by others. The transfer or the sale of purchase. Banding requirements. Importation and exportation. The use of raptors in falconry. Falconry field meets.
Yep.
Education, abatement, depredation, release, loss, and disposition, theft, death, and disposition, record keeping and reporting, Colorado requirements for captive breeding of raptors, which is completely different than what you talked about of just going out and capturing one.
Yep.
This is probably, outside of fur bearer regulations, which I deal with a lot, is probably one of the most comprehensive single not species, but classifications of species that you could possibly get.
Yeah.
It looks like there's a total of 22 or 23 individual components that go into the raptor equation.
Yep.
What's wrong with it? What could make it better?
A handful of things, actually. I'm actually working on a citizen's petition right now for this. I have
to go in front of the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission.
Yep. I have I have to remember what it's called, non-commercial wildlife game park permit, something like that, non-commercial something. And that's because there is a regulation in there that states we cannot use corvids, which are jays, magpies, ravens, crows, for education here in Colorado. There's a specific Colorado state, so most states do allow you to use them, which means if there's a crow that comes into a rehab facility that maybe has a permanently disabled wing, but could live, again, a mentally and healthy, happy life with humans, normally that bird would be placed with an education program, but we're not allowed to do that here. So the corvids are either euthanized or sent to other programs out of state, or possibly go into a foster program, but I only know of one group here that has foster corvids. So I would love to be able to teach people about how amazing crows and ravens are. We're not allowed to. And so I have exotic corvids because although we can't use the native species, we can use African species. Well, doesn't quite make sense to me.
Really?
I don't know. So, I don't want to say anything too crazy. But I had to get that license to be able to import one of my non-grandfathered in a new bird, a white-necked raven. And when we were first, and by we, I mean me and one of the guys from CPW were going through trying to get this permit, which is super fast for me. I really appreciate. We could get the bird into the state. In the regulations, it doesn't, for that permit, it doesn't specifically state that we can't use the birds on that license for education programs. But it does as the very last sentence on the license itself. So I'm able to import that bird in. I have him here. He's a great teaching bird. I'd love to take him out to teach, but the regulations read differently than the permit does. So that's one that I'm actively trying to change. A couple things on there. Back in, I think it was 2016, CPW agreed to take on the federal regulations for raptors. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, that happened. But a lot of it is left up to interpretation of whoever you are working with.
Right.
So if I talk to one officer, I might get one answer. I talk to another officer, I get a completely different answer.
Well, that seems to be the case on a lot of different things in today's environment.
Yes. And it makes it really difficult for us because, some of our permits and things are like, okay, well, what size is our enclosure supposed to be? 8 by 8 by 8, 6 by 6 by 6, 30 by 20 by 15? We don't know. And so it depends on who you talk to. So there's some things in there, especially under the education, conservation education portion, that I would love to see changed. And if we are going to reflect the federal regulations, then we need to reflect the federal regulations, which means that if this person...
That sounds like wolves.
Crazy, right? If this person...
Just a comparable analysis here.
If this person is being regulated this way, then this person should be regulated this way. Mm-hmm. But that's not how it's working. And so there's some stuff in there that I've been talking with a couple CPW officers that I really like. They were like, man, how can we change the wording of this? So I'm starting to kind of get my fingers into it besides the non-commercial thing to see what we can change. Some of these regs have been updated fairly recently, like with the peregrines and the amount of time we're allowed to take birds. But some of it is very antiquated. And again, it'd be really nice if it just says, this is what it is. But if we read through that, there's contradictions in some of it. And then again, depending on who you talk to, it's different. So I'm always like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do with this?
And not to interrupt, but there's probably not that many people in Colorado Parks and Wildlife or most game agencies, game and fish agencies, that are fully versed into birds of prey or falconry. It's probably this thing that they deal with and they kind of know a little bit about, but they probably know more about it from falconers themselves.
Yep.
Than they do for themselves. I mean, how many CPW people do you know that have actually had birds of prey?
None.
Yeah, at all. And so here they are regulating something that they're not fully versed in. Mm-hmm. And I'm not knocking them, but there has to be a level of anecdotal boots on the ground education that goes back into, say, maybe we should participate in this. Mm-hmm. And this is me talking. I'm just hypothetical here. Would it be feasible to see about? I mean, they've got a canine program, and they didn't used to, and they went through this whole entire process. Mm-hmm. What about a 3 or a 6 month apprentice program for CPW staff? Not everybody by any means, but somebody that wanted to sign up to it. I mean, to turn around and say, okay, I'm going to follow Devin around, or I'm going to turn around and engage, a certain amount of accredited hours.
Yep.
I don't know how to make some of that better, but I know it has to come from the user group and the stakeholders to make sure that it's done appropriately, especially when you're dealing with something live that nobody else has any knowledge or institutional knowledge about.
I would love to teach a class to any of the CPW folks that are interested and say, here's how you fill out the paperwork. I've had inspections before, inspectors who've come, who don't know what form to fill out and don't know how to fill it out. So I've had to walk them through it. Now they know, which is great. I would love to be able to do something like that where me and, a handful of other falconers, whatever, those with different birds can go out and say, hey, come out to our facilities, come hunting with us, come see how we work with these birds. Let me explain, the different terms and things, different words that we use for the birds and for their equipment. See the enclosures that we have.
Well, they got 21 pages of regulations here. Mm-hmm. I mean, outside of just opening up and reading about it, it'd be nice if they knew a little bit about it. Mm-hmm. And there again, I'm not knocking anybody.
Oh, no, not at all.
I'm throwing them out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
I'm just saying for the practical application that when you have groups and entities and organizations and individuals that are trying to essentially stop you from doing what you're doing because you are the sportsman, you have a license, you are allowing that bird to be the tool that you are partners with, there's people out there that don't want you to do that. Mm-hmm. Then when you have the regulatory side of things that maybe they're not well versed or they're not schooled appropriately enough,
mm-hmm.
and they're supposed to play the mediator, moderator, litigator, arbitrator. I mean, and I'm mixing apples here with oranges probably, and some people will gripe at me when they listen to this. But rehabilitators are different than what you do.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yep.
But rehabilitators have to go through some education and some training and some inspections.
Yep.
How many people in Colorado Parks and Wildlife that regulate that are rehabilitators?
I only know one.
So it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to turn around and say, I can speak on behalf of you and the bird, or I can speak on behalf of you or the raccoon in the rehabilitator situation when you don't have the experience to be able to adhere to the regulation.
Yep.
Now, I'm sure that they probably took these regulations, formulated them for a variety of different reasons, and maybe with falconers at the time, but then probably emulated, duplicated, or replicated their regulations off of other state programs because birds as a whole don't rely on state lines and they can fly where they want to go, and they're federally regulated on top of the state regulation, correct?
Yes, and actually I want to say something on that because and I'm sure people get mad at me for saying this, but Colorado has become very restrictive on going in and out of our state. And so it is very difficult for falconers that are from other states to come into our state. And it's because we now not only require a health certificate, which I 100% agree with a health certificate, make sure the bird is safe, healthy before we bring that bird into the state. We have to have a raptor importation license through CPW, and that's something that we've had for years. It's an online license. I just did one yesterday. It's an online license. They do it really quick. Our state agent that does those is like super speedy. I really appreciate it. But now we also have this extra one that is a state vet entry license. So if there's somebody bringing a bird in, that person's vet that issues the health certificate has to send the health certificate to our state vet office. The state vet office has to call that vet to get another number written on top of that import permit to come in. We already have the state import. We already have the health certificate. Now we're adding another thing. So it's getting really, really difficult for us to bring birds in. Now, here's the other thing I would love to see updated. If I take an education bird and I go to Nebraska a lot, right? So if I go to Nebraska, which I'm also permitted in,
right?
I go to Nebraska, I cross the border and I do an hour-long library program and I'm gone for 3 hours and I come back over state lines, I have to do another importation permit to come back over state lines, even though it's the same bird that left. Not with falconry birds. This is the weird thing. Education bird. So if I take my Harris hawk that does education programs for schools, and I take him over the border of Nebraska for 30 minutes, I have to do a CPW importation license to come back over the border.
But if you went over there and hunted pheasants legally, you could turn around and come right back.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's something maybe we need to look into trying to figure out how to streamline some of the conversations and stuff.
That was my thing too. I was like, birds fly.
Yeah. The bird could, you just, I don't know, get somebody on the other side of the border, just have the bird meet you there.
Yep.
And I think that's some of the things that probably where the bureaucracy of government doesn't really make it easy for people to be logical, systematic, incremental, transparent, and accountable. And I think that there's a lot of things that we need to consider on a variety of different levels. I'm not saying we open it up willy-nilly and it just goes, with no sideboards and blinders. But there has to be some common sense. And for somebody to understand that, they either have to listen to somebody gripe and complain enough, or they have to be able to do it themselves. And if they're not able to do it themselves because they don't know, then they need to sit down, and maybe that's part of a conversation where 3 to 5 people sit in the same room and you get representatives from different groups and you have a stakeholder meeting and say, these are our problems. We want to know how we can address them. Can it be simple regulatory? Or does it have to be a citizen's petition? Those are things that I think that we could probably make the suggestion on how to work through.
Yeah.
Because you have a federal component and a state component already because of the bird.
Yeah.
And then it's even harder for you to deal with what you're dealing with in the state, but not so much on the federal side.
No.
The federal side is a lot easier than the state side.
Much easier.
and so for people that are trying to alter or take away your ability to work with Prima or any other bird of prey. They don't want you to do it because they look at things from an animal rights perspective. Yeah. They look at things from a inhumane or a cruel perspective. For one, you probably shouldn't have the bird. And for two, you shouldn't be able to go out there and turn around and help the bird feed itself and utilize that meal for yourself as well.
Yep.
There's a lot of circular components of this that probably would bewilder or baffle the hell out of people when they figure out just how complicated it is when it should be fairly simple. If you had a 2-minute soapbox speech, elevator speech, and somebody was criticizing you for what you do with the bird, and I'll play devil's advocate. I think it's wrong that you do what you do. I don't think you should utilize that bird. You damn sure shouldn't own it. And then I think for you to take it out for your enjoyment and to go out and kill animals is wrong. What would you say?
Well, I appreciate your insight. First of all, I've been doing this for 20 years. My degree is in wildlife management, wildlife biology. I know quite a bit about these birds and their behavior. And I want to teach you a little bit about understanding what a stressed or upset bird looks like. Many times people think that this bird is upset or stressed. Do you know how to tell when a bird is stressed?
I don't.
Okay. So when a bird is stressed, typically, we're going to use a hawk, for example. They're upset. The hackles, which are the feathers on the back of their head, they're going to stick them up. She might put her wings out, vocalize, and she's going to be, looking around, trying to get away, right? Clearly, this bird is sitting here. She's fluffed up. She's been preening. She's had her foot up, hanging out.
She pooped on the floor.
She pooped on the floor. Got a little bit lighter. Helps my arm. When we are going out and hunting with these birds, it's a partnership. This bird has the opportunity to leave me at any time, but she returns to me because she realizes this is a great thing. Food magically appears out of this glove. I'm a walking refrigerator. It's super fantastic. So she follows me around. She follows my dog around. We have had relationships with wild raptors for longer than any other animal. Thousands and thousands of years, even before dogs, even before cats. People have been working with these raptors and hunting. I mean, think about, we're going out, and if we're hunting a rabbit or something, is it more natural to have somebody shoot a rabbit with a gun to eat, or have a hawk catch it and eat it? Right?
And
this is a bird that, and we'll share it. And this is a bird that could, out in the wild on her own, be hunting rabbits. So to keep this tradition, this art alive, that's what I'm about. I don't have kids. This is my child. This bird gets treated better than some people's children. Gets treated better than some people's dogs. Gets treated better than some people's cats. The bird has very, very comfortable equipment on. Sometimes people say, you shouldn't have the bird chained. I don't see a chain. Okay, a chain is made out of metal links. We would never chain a bird, right? She's got soft, double-layered, smooth on the inside equipment. These are anklets. They actually come off. So when she's off hunting season and she's in her mews, her aviary that she can fly around it and play in, this equipment comes off. She gets to hang out, be fat and happy, and do whatever she wants. We have soft leather jesses. We have a swivel and a leash to make sure that if she is sitting here and decides to jump, like she wants to go eat the little fluff ball in the camera, she's not going to get hurt, right? She has everything that she needs here. This is a predator. We are predators as well. So we can associate with this. It is a lot easier for me to sit on the couch and call Domino's and have food delivered to me, right? Same for her. It is a lot easier for me just to hang out here with this human and live in a temperature-controlled enclosure where I'm protected from other predators and protected from disease and protected from the weather.
And wind turbines.
And wind turbines. And I get my food delivered to me. I get vaccinated against viruses. I have a veterinarian that comes on site to check me out. Our facility has extreme biosecurity. We've got foot baths. We do spray downs. We have special shoes we wear to make sure that nothing is brought into our birds. Some falconers do that. I'm pretty extreme. Some falconers don't. I'm very paranoid about anything being brought into these. But this bird is very, very well treated and very well handled. I can assure you that. And we're conservationists. We're not out there taking hundreds and hundreds of animals to eat. I might be lucky in a season to catch 2 rabbits with her, maybe a squirrel. That's what I'd say.
If you wanted to propagate the sport of falconry, what would you want people to know?
We want this sport to continue. It absolutely has to continue. And for anybody that was interested in the sport, learning about the sport, I would invite you to come out and meet a falconer. see our facilities, see how we care for our birds. Come out and see a hunt. I would love to have folks actually see how these birds work in the wild, and keeping in mind that we might not catch anything. That's why we call it hunting and not catching. We might not flush anything the whole time that we're out there. The bird is still having a great time. I can watch her. She has fun, right? She's going out and about. I would love for people to come see something like that. This sport, unfortunately, is one of the most quickly dying sports. It's very
labor
expensive.
intensive.
Yep, and as you saw, look at the paperwork.
Yeah.
Right? It's very labor intensive. This isn't like a gun where I just put her in a gun safe at the end of the season and
that's what I was saying earlier about the 365 days a year. This is it.
Yes, this is it. I'm taking care of this bird. If the weather's bad, I'm still out there. If I'm sick, I'm still out there, right? We still have to take care of our bird just like, because she's part of the family. So I invite people to actually learn about what falconry really is rather than seeing these bad posts and stories and things on social media or on I'm always crapping on YouTube, but on YouTube, I invite them to reach out to actual falconers and educators, rehabbers, learn about these birds, learn about their behaviors, their relationship with humans. This is not a tame, domesticated animal by any means. She is trained and tolerant and sees me as a partner. But come out and see it.
You go to a zoo, you see it. You walk to the next exhibit, and then you see pandas and snakes and elephants or whatever. They come to see something like this, whether they went to a field meet or they went to a bird of prey sanctuary or the raptor center like in Pueblo. I'm sure there's other ones around, but I'm just not familiar with them. There's a learning experience that people, and that's why I say when we do what we do, don't judge me until you've seen what I do. You can criticize because you're ignorant, but don't judge me until you see what I do.
Exactly.
And so, how many people do you think have licenses in the state of Colorado to do falconry?
Not a lot. As far as the actual number that have a license versus how many of us have a license in a bird, I can't tell you.
We can probably get that from Parks and Wildlife just because it's a license deal.
I would think so.
The reason I mention that is because so the criticism on my side of the fence from the trapping side, there's only 350 people that do this, or there's only 1,000 people that do this. I wonder if there's that many falconers. There's only 350 people that harvest bighorn sheep or hunt bighorn sheep. There's only 322 people that harvest moose or hunt moose. The antis, the extremists that want to turn around and take things away, they utilize this terminology that just because nobody does it or very few people do it, nobody should be allowed to do it. That's cruel and inhumane, it's torturous, and it's antiquated. It's a relic from the 1800s or whatever. I think that this, in its kindest sense, of what has happened over the course of the last 25,000 years or whoever's been using these birds that long, is something to where the tradition and heritage goes along and almost mirrors the tradition and heritage of what you just heard houndsmen go after with 127. Yep. It's who they are. It's what they do. Yep. Hound hunting is not the oldest form of utilizing an animal for a tool, but is one of the oldest. And when I was fortunate enough to be able to go to Mongolia in 2001, and I got to hunt, I saw the Mongols. And it was the most interesting thing to me because the Mongols that were riding horses with a flipping eagle on their, and I'm thinking, I wouldn't want to ride a horse into this.
I'm not that coordinated.
Yeah, and then they would get to a high point and they would release that eagle down, and I didn't get to watch multiple episodes of it, but maybe 2, but to see that's who they are. That's it. They live it, eat it, breathe it, sleep it, drink it. That's the tradition and heritage. I know Native Americans did similar things. I know that Aborigines and African Americans have done different things. Just because not that many people do it doesn't mean that nobody should do it. It means that you should cherish it, you should pedestalize it, and you should make sure that it stays on in perpetuity.
Yes.
And the education is the main component of that whole deal. So,
not many people are rocket scientists.
No,
we should still have that.
Yeah, not. There's a lot of things not many people are, and we should, or maybe we shouldn't have on some things. A final question on my end: if you have time to go do anything other than play with your birds, Who watches your birds?
My husband.
Yeah. So there's not much family vacation time. No, when you have birds like this, it's not like somebody just comes and takes care of your birds. You don't go to Spain. You don't go hunting in Mexico. You don't. What you do is birds.
Yep. This is a lifestyle. Falconry is a lifestyle. So our bird is part of the family. So if I need to go somewhere, I have to have someone who's trained with these birds to come over and babysit for me. Mm-hmm. I'm very lucky. I can call my other falcon friends. Right. I'm babysitting somebody else's bird right now. She drove 4 hours to get. I've babysat, from other states. People drive their birds to me because I do take very, very impeccable care of them. But yeah, I get to go on usually one vacation a year, which I do 2 weeks. Yeah. And so we'll go somewhere awesome.
You're probably sweating bullets the whole time.
The whole time. Yeah. Luckily, because I'm a nervous parent, I'm like, whoa, what's happening? What's that? I have cameras on all of my enclosures. So I could check in. I'm like, okay, Prima doing okay? Oh, she's playing with her ball. Okay, we're all right.
Where'd that mouse come from?
What is that? What's that? Yeah. So I'm always creeping on him. But yeah, to have somebody that is skilled enough to come in and take care of them and weigh them, make sure that they're getting all of the food that they need, make sure they get their medications, the vitamins, all of that, that's few and far between. So it is a lifestyle. I travel with these birds a lot. She goes a lot of places with me to do presentations and to go on hunting trip. I just got back from Texas. Woo! Yep. Harris Hawk on my shirt, where she got to chase some jackrabbits and stuff down there. So if I can take them with me, I do. Because for me,
you check into a hotel, you just say, I got a bird.
And most of the hotels are like, that's the coolest thing ever. So I bring them out and I show the staff and talk about them and poop on the floor. No. And I've got full traveling setups. I have traveling perches that go with me, big sheets that we roll out so we don't poop on the floor, right? But the birds can sit out. They actually like watching TV, which I know seems really weird, but this bird can see more color than our eyes can. So I'm always fascinated by, I wonder what they can actually. Television. Yeah, so she'll watch and
you don't do like animal shows, do you?
Absolutely. I do. It's really fun when they have the fish or whatever flying or birds will fly and they're like, whoa, watch. And they're looking in the room like, where'd that fish go? I don't understand. It's hilarious. So if I'm out of the hotel room, I'll perch her out so she can sit and just watch TV. She'll just watch. And we'll bring little cameras, I'll put a little camera so I can watch if we go out to get dinner or something. I can see she's just greatly enjoying the fish on the TV. Yeah. These guys are so intelligent. That's how we, work with them and partner with them. I've got parrots also. And so it's really neat. Just kind of funny side note, to travel with the parrots. I have one that goes, what are you doing? Who are you? What are you? Constantly. And so it's weird checking into a hotel. I have to tell whoever's on either side, I promise there's not some weird thing happening in this hotel room where somebody's just asking, who are you, the whole time. It's a parrot. It's a lot of fun. My whole life is birds. If we were ever, if falconry and working with these birds were ever to be taken away from us, I don't know what I would do. That's it. There's nothing else. This is my life. Birds are my life.
Same as what the houndsman said during 127. Same as what a lot of the other individuals feel, because it's who they are. It's not what they do.
Yeah.
And I look forward to future conversations, and I know that you and I are going to work together on some different things, and probably maybe some political type stuff, or maybe some avocational stuff too. Just to be able to try to connect the dots, because you are regulated under this book. Every sportsman in the state of Colorado is regulated under this book.
Yep, we're paying for the licenses just like everybody else.
Exactly, and so. You got any websites you want to direct anybody to, or if people want more information about falconry or whatever, you want to direct them to any place?
Sure, yeah. Just our falconry club is High Plains Falconers. So if you reach out, talk to one of us. We've got members all over the place. We now also have a member in Panama and in South Africa.
Oh, cool.
So we've got members from all over the world now, we can say, which is super exciting. And again, you don't have to be a falconer to be in the club. If you're someone that's interested, we have photographers. We have wildlife photographers that are members who just come out to get photos like that right there. That's my red tail. To see these birds fly and work with them. We go out, do education, talk about these guys, and look at those smiling faces. We have a great time with our birds. This is what we do. Like we said, it's a lifestyle. I don't know what else I would do. There's nothing else really.
Yeah.
That's it. This is my life.
We're going to see you at Outdoorsman Days?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Good.
I'm excited.
August 8th and 9th in Florence, Colorado. Well, Devin Jaffe, High Plains Falconers and Prima.
Yes.
And I just want to thank you for coming up, making the drive.
Oh, yeah.
I think that these kind of conversations probably need to happen a little bit more frequently. And you are part of the equation because you are a sportswoman.
Yep.
And when I said that when we were going through 127, I'm a sportsman, and I bow hunt, and I'm a sportsman, and I trap, and I'm a sportsman, and I elk hunt. I'm a sportsman, and I don't do falconry. But I want to help support the falconers in whatever level we possibly can. And I think the tradition and the heritage that you guys bring along to it shows how important all of this is, because not only what you do from the tradition side, you do it from a wildlife management side, you do it from a sportsman side, and you do it from an education side. And I just feel privileged to be able to have run into you before, participate at different levels, and I just want to thank you very, very much.
Oh, well, thanks for, having us and being interested. And, I want to encourage other falconers to say something as well, get involved. So much of this is just, it doesn't affect me, so I'm not going to worry about it. It does affect you, and it will affect you. Mm-hmm. So we got to stand up for our birds. We got to stand up for the sport and for wildlife conservation and wildlife management.
Well, Devin, appreciate it very much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Look forward to working with you.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Through the Gates. For more content like this, make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe on all of our channels.